Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Lunar Lessons podcast, or the Lunar Lessons podcast episode of the Rockstar Manifestors podcast. This is a podcast only episode that I do, which means it's not available on my Facebook Live, which is where I typically record the weekly podcast episodes. And so these Lunar Lessons episode are really myself, a way for me to hold myself accountable. That's the right way to say it. And keep doing my lunar practices and see how things evolve, how I change, how I grow, the lessons that I'm learning, and not only to document them in my journal, but also to share them with you guys so that you can see and experience sort of my process and hopefully use that as inspiration or a way to, help you see things differently or work through the lunar cycle and keep me doing the work. So this particular episode is being recorded on May 22nd, 2023. We already, just last Friday, a few days ago, had the new moon in Taurus. So I tried to get the Lunar Lessons episodes up before the new moon, but it did not work out this time. But that's okay. The lessons still apply. The information is still relevant. And so the information that I'm sharing with you today is for the second new moon in Aries lunar cycle. We started the zodiac calendar year with a new moon in Aries, and then we had a second one because when the first one happened, the moon was in very early degrees of Aries. And so by the time the next new moon came around, it was still in Aries. So it moved back to Aries at the tail end degrees. So before I dive down that rabbit hole and get too complicated, just know that this is a second Aries new moon episode and the lunar lessons for that lunar cycle. My intention for the first Aries new moon was to step into feeling confident to be myself. And so with the second Aries new moon, I tweaked it just a little bit. I still kept the focus on me because Aries is all about the self anyway. And I am an Aries. So it's like amplified. It's all about me, as it should be for all of us. Our intentions are for our own benefit. And so the second Aries new moon intention shifted from being confident being myself to feeling comfortable being myself. And so as we walk through this episode, you'll see how that played out for me and the insights that I gained and things along those lines. So that was a shift. And the reason it shifted, I think, from shifted to feeling comfortable is because the second Aries new moon, shortly after it moved into Taurus. We began Taurus season. And so Taurus is all about creature comforts and up-leveling and abundance and like indulgences, a little bit of indulgences, to help us up-level our abundant mindset. So I think that really felt like a good combination of Aries and Taurus working together, feeling comfortable being myself. So with this new moon, I came to that decision, if you will, of just tweaking my intention fairly early on. Right around the new moon, but I did not have any specific action steps that were different from the previous lunar cycle. I just kind of thought they would maybe amplify a little more, or as always, also be revealed to me as to what my focus needed to be. So I did not have any specific actions other than, which is something I've been leaning into doing anyway, wearing clothes and the types of clothes that I feel comfortable in, that make me feel myself, right? Or I don't feel like I'm putting on pretenses or that I'm trying to fit into certain clothes or certain identity. The stuff that really I like to wear. And also with that Taurus energy, like up leveling it a little bit, making sure I got rid of the stuff that wasn't really wearable anymore, like with the stains, and kind of saying, I'm up leveling. I am wearing nice, clean, well-kept clothes. They don't have to be fancy, but also letting go of this mentality. Oh, I can make do with it for a while, or I can make it, it'll be okay. Letting go of that type of lack and making do mentality. So the actions were wearing clothes and types of clothes that I feel comfortable in to, I guess, provide that energy, that comfortable being myself type of atmosphere and feeling. And let's see. Okay. And also I'm reading my notes. If you guys wonder if you're listening what the quiet was, I write these notes and things down through the lunar cycle. So I'm reading them. And so also I've been stepping into showing up as the various versions of me, right? Like we're not always perfectly made up, we're not always dressed to the nines, etc. So I have been also working over the last year or so, more specifically, to really showing up as the different versions of me. Sometimes I wear less makeup or no makeup. Sometimes it's, I'm all fully dressed up or fully done up because I felt like it or had the energy that day. So really all these facets of me being more comfortable showing up that way publicly, being visible that way, which was uncomfortable and still is a bit uncomfortable because I'm used to the way of thinking, that a lot of my family does, and a lot of other people do, that when we're showing up publicly, we have to be perfectly put together or well put together, and manicured is not quite the right word, but just put together. And so I'm stepping away from that, saying, that's not me all the time. That's not authentically me. I'm not always perfectly polished or well put together. Sometimes I decide I don't feel like wearing makeup that day. And so allowing myself and being uncomfortable doing so, showing up that way more and more. Or not fully ready is what I wrote here in my journal. Like showing up, being comfortable, going out and showing up, not fully ready. So let's see. Let me hold this up. Maybe that will help. I can follow along my notes better. And that's part of it. That's part of living my intention of feeling comfortable being myself. Feeling comfortable speaking the way I want to speak. Showing up not fully ready. And so I realized as I was focusing more on the clothes and the appearance, I realized that these are the things I was choosing to focus on, because even though there was a little bit of discomfort, I was just choosing, like, picking things on purpose that I wanted to focus on. The lessons and the focus that were made clear to me as I did my journaling and started realizing these insights that I was getting, it's the real focus, the real emphasis this lunar cycle was stepping into speaking and acting and communicating as my authentic self. And so I wrote in my journal, because like I said, this is coming straight to you guys as to what my experience was. Let me rephrase that. Talking as my authentic fucking self. And that's the key, that I was filtering myself quite a bit forward facing, publicly, on video or on lives or on stories. I would be okay with saying things like damn or shit that weren't so perceived or maybe controversial. I was filtering myself, thinking with or because of the thinking that it wasn't as professional to say that. But that's how I speak with, the people I'm comfortable with, my friends or certain family members that just, that just kind of like, don't worry about keeping up pretenses or living up to a certain ideal or expectation. And so that's what the focus was. That might be weird. It's like, really, just the way you speak or saying bad words publicly? That was what was brought up to me. And the reason that I say was brought up to me is because I was seeing a lot of reels and videos with people that I follow, and even people that I didn't follow, but that showed up, so, the way they magically do in our feed, who swear. And I really gravitated to them. It's like, yes, I felt myself saying, that's how I want to show up. I want to be that comfortable. So see, that comfortable came playing in. And so this meant that my lesson, or to what to work on, letting go of filtering myself and wondering or worrying about what other people think or say about the way I talk naturally, authentically. That and to show up publicly more and more the way that I show up with the people I don't filter myself with. I am naturally, if you can hear my voice or if you see my videos or even speak to me, if see me in person, I am naturally upbeat and cheery. And at the same time, I am also spicy and fiery and feisty and moody and grumpy sometimes. So embracing all facets of myself and not singling out or just focusing on the ones that are acceptable, so to speak. Having this pointed out to me by the universe, as the universe always does, made me realize that I relate to and like people that speak that way. It feels empowering to me to hear other people speak that way, which is one of the reasons I believe I gravitate toward that type of person. And that doesn't mean swearing for shock value, like every other word, or just throwing it in there to piss people off or to incite some type of response. It's speaking the way I do naturally, where I just throw it in, it just comes out, and it's either for emphasis or my natural rhythm of speaking. So I'm not going overboard. That's not what being comfortable was showing me. That's not how it was playing out. But to be always on the same level instead of saying, oh, what will these people think? Or can I speak this way here? And that doesn't only include doing things like this, being forward facing. It also includes things in my life, like around the people in my, my circle, my family, my friends, or acquaintances, associates, whatever. Because even in all aspects of life, I know people that speak that way, that swear and say, how they would normally speak in all aspects of my life. So I realized there is no need to filter myself from speaking just authentically, not going overboard and not silencing myself, just finding and becoming comfortable, consistently living in that middle ground that is authentic with no pretense, no filtering, no wondering. And this will be an ongoing process. It's not like it's completed in one lunar cycle, but it is the thing that is brought up. And so now it just starts to become the thing that is incorporated in life, right? So doing this publicly in places like this, my podcast and the live recordings that I do, instead of just in my safer spaces. When I had a membership, I didn't filter myself so much there because it was a closed group. In the group that I have, the Moon Manifesting Rockstars Facebook group, when I do lives or events, workshops, etc., in there, I don't filter myself so much because people have chosen to be a part of the group, and it is a closed group. It's not shown publicly where anyone can just find it, like the podcast and like the Facebook page, the videos that I do there. So it's many different areas of my life that I realized let go of the filter, and that I am not for everyone. So it may not resonate with some people, but even though that might be uncomfortable as well, it also, more importantly, let me go of this weight of what other people, would they stick in the group? Would they, continue to watch or listen or participate? And if those are the things, like my swearing or speaking authentically is the thing that people don't like, that's okay. There are other people who they will resonate with. And not everyone has to like me. I know this in my head logically, but the feelings, come up where you're like, oh man, I'm going to offend someone, or I need to keep it kind of vanilla, or, not super spicy. And letting go of that weight was far more beneficial, or feels far more beneficial than the discomfort of showing up and just feeling uncomfortable doing this all the time in all the places. Let's see. I did speak on this a little bit. I also realized I don't worry too much about saying things like shit or damn, but really held back and filtered myself from using fuck and things that are more perceived to be offensive. So I did a podcast episode, not this one, but earlier I did a podcast episode a couple of episodes back using the F-bomb to enforce boundaries. Because as the lunar cycle progressed and I started showing up, like doing that podcast publicly, I realized that that's what the swearing frequently did for me. It enforced the boundaries that I was establishing. It gave me, in my thinking, authority, authenticity, where people would at least hear me, or I would catch their attention, whereas before maybe they would just kind of tune me out. And so it's not up to other people to honor my boundaries. It's up to me to establish the boundaries and then decide what I'm going to do if the boundary isn't honored, or if it's not being held up to, or people are not honoring the boundary that I communicate to them. So that's what that episode was all about. And that was definitely a little uncomfortable, but I felt really good after doing that episode. Like, oh, it was awkward. And maybe people that know me well could tell that I was a little off, like I wasn't saying it the way or in the flow that I normally did. But people that don't know me well may not have picked up on that. And if you did by chance, that's okay, because that's part of the process. And so the lesson is also being revealed through the lunar cycle to stop being less me in order to avoid making others uncomfortable. And I have spoken about this from different perspectives in the past, that a lot of times when we do filter ourselves, when we do hold ourselves back, it's because we're working on or trying to keep from making other people uncomfortable. But in the process, we're becoming less us. We're uncomfortable in a negative sense, not in the expansive, moving forward, stepping into being the badass you or me, right? But in the uncomfortable, unhealthy sense, as if we're being held back or shrunken or diminished in some way. And so the lesson is to stop being less me in order to avoid making others uncomfortable, because I am not for everyone and everyone is not for me. What I have seen is that even though it feels a bit uncomfortable doing this and letting go of the filter, it also feels good. Like I just said, like starting to shed weight I've been unnecessarily carrying around. So you can see that at least the lesson is authentic, because I already spoke about that stuff a little bit and I'm just reading it back in my journal notes now. So it's authentic. It has set in my brain, right? The lesson and the things that I have been learning. So let's see. I realized that the resistance I had in always speaking like me, and when I write me in my journal, I write it in capital letters, capital M, capital E. The resistance I had in always speaking like me comes from stories and about how inappropriate or unprofessional or unladylike it is. How people I know and care about don't approve or like that type of language. And and they only use that type of language when they're angry, right? So it had this story was like, only use it when you're angry, or that's when I'm hearing it used from my close circle, like family and the things that I grew up learning by observation, as well as lessons and things that were said to me. So I had these stories of it being unprofessional, inappropriate, unladylike, and it's only used in anger. And so identifying those stories is part of the process of then letting them go, rewriting them, saying that is bullshit, right? Those are stories. They are not fact. And so there's no need to keep living those stories. When I examine them, it's like they're stories and they're lessons that may have been passed on or absorbed, or that's how my brain interpreted these lessons, but it's not fact. It is, in fact, a story. And so it's fine for me to say things like fuck and bullshit and all these things in my everyday language in all areas of my life. I see them, and I had this discussion with a friend. I referenced a retreat that I attended back in February. We had this discussion about language and swearing there, and how a couple of us see this type of language as empowering and freeing. And other people still, and not that they need to change it, because the truth for everybody is their own. I'm not saying that if you are not comfortable, if you are a person who doesn't swear, that you need to start swearing. The lesson that I'm sharing here is that the lesson for me was to step into that feeling comfortable doing it, because that is the way I enjoy speaking. That is the way that I talk. And so with that conversation we had at the retreat, there are people who say, I actually want to swear less because I don't like the way it makes me feel. And so that is not wrong. That is absolutely right for them, for that person. And it's also at the same time right for those of us who feel that it is empowering and freeing, and they can both exist for different people. They are a personal form of self-expression. And I also wrote this down with underlines saying, so I see these words as empowering and freeing, but really what they are words. They're merely words created with letters put together in a certain order. They are a personal form of self-expression. Who deemed these words as swear words? Society? Authority? I don't know the answer to that. But I know that as a whole, society has looked at those as inappropriate words, or something that you use in your personal life, but not your professional life, or or in your private life, but not your public life. And so I looked for what type of support. So I had this, this insight, this knowledge. I started doing things that felt uncomfortable in the pursuit of feeling comfortable. And so I also did a little bit of research. And so what I have found, or one thing that I found, is that there have been studies done that show swearing in an authentic way relieves stress, improves mental health, and can make people laugh. I mean, think of comedians. But I also want to point out, because I wrote down comedians as an example. Comedians, a lot of them use swear words in their shows. I also follow comedians who don't swear. It's clean comedy, if you will. And I adore them just as much. Why? Because they're being authentic to themselves. they're not trying to keep up with the crowd of inserting swear words if it's not their jam. And that's why they resonate with me, not because they swear or they don't swear, but because I like their sense of humor and they are being authentically themselves. And so that I realized I could take that and apply that to business, to family life, public life, friend life, here on the interwebs life. As long as I'm being authentic to myself and not trying to fit or filter or somehow contort myself to someone else's expectations or based on what people's reactions might be, I will actually attract the right kind of people. And the people that don't resonate with me can then know, okay, I'm going to go, that's not quite my cup of tea. I don't, resonate with that. And what does that do? That also attracts people that are going to enjoy working with me, because on coaching calls, I also don't filter myself. And I have had people that I have been on coaching calls with send me emails. I can't think of anybody that said things in the moment, but send emails or communications that said, I really would appreciate, or I don't appreciate the swearing. It's not very professional. And I had to take a step back and say, well, that's okay. If I'm not the person that helps you because the language or the way that I speak is distracting or off-putting, then that's good information. And so if I'm not the person to work with on a one-on-one basis, that doesn't mean that they can't hang around and still listen to my lives or participate in activities that I share or consume information, like get my playlist or whatever the case is. It's just that one-on-one type of work. I'm not the coach for them because it's off-putting. And guess what? That's okay. And I was pretty damn proud of myself for communicating that to that person. And we maintained a very mutual respect and interaction level, just not working on a one-on-one basis. That's okay. It's perfect, actually. So I am continuing to choose authentic self-expression. And in the words of Joan Jett, if you don't know who that is, she's a female rock star. And you'll also learn, if you're newer to these parts, I very often incorporate music and lyrics and rock stars and all this type. I call it the rock star mindset. Rock star manifesting is something you see on hashtags for my post often. So Joan Jett has a song that perfectly embodies this. I don't give a damn about my bad reputation. That's a song of hers. And it's one that I have on the Manifesting Songs playlist. If you haven't yet gotten it, you will find a link to get it and be able to download it in the notes, the description of the show. And so I'm letting go of defending. This is like through the lunar cycle after, I got these insights, had taken action, got some lessons learned, some information. And so through the waning half of the lunar cycle, I jotted down, I am letting go of defending, explaining, or justifying how I express myself. And then I also wrote in there in parentheses, I'm also letting go of apologizing for it by simply saying, fuck it. There is a meme, not a meme, a reel. If you're a Yellowstone TV show follower, there are a couple of reels where that's all that they say. They show all the phrases or several of the instances where they just say, fuck it. And that's my phrase for this lunar cycle. Fuck it. Just be me. Fuck it. Right? And so that's me stepping into that rock star mindset that I just talked about. Let's see, to take this back to how I started the lunar cycle and initially thinking that the focus for me was going to be dressing the way that I feel comfortable and authentic. That is not uncomfortable for me. Like dressing, and like I did a reel the other day where I showed a bunch of my graphic tees. So dressing that way is not uncomfortable for me. or as uncomfortable for me. The I think the reason I was focusing, like chose to focus on that, is because I don't currently own as much of the style of clothing that I like and that I feel comfortable in. So that's more about up leveling and stepping more into abundance to get more of that clothing and ditch the shit that doesn't feel good, that doesn't fit, that has rips or stains that aren't so, like on the cool level. Stains, not so much are cool, but rips or whatever are sometimes cool. So that was an undercurrent lesson. It's like stepping into that abundance mindset of getting it, going to get more of the types of clothes that I do enjoy instead of making do, like I talked about at the beginning, with what I've had and the things that aren't quite up to par. So I don't currently have as much. So it was more about getting more of and replacing stuff I have that is not a hell yeah for me. So I got rid of several pieces of clothes, some that I enjoyed, but that had served their life. They've lived their life. They were not really functional anymore or in good condition. So the universe kept sending me so how did I write this? So the universe kept sending me the word fuck in various methods of media because that's where my discomfort was, using that word in the media. And like I wrote in my journal multiple times this lunar cycle, I am Patty fucking Diaz. And I wrote that and said that as a mantra throughout this lunar cycle once I wrote it down in my journal. And it's time that I own that shit. So to help me embody that, I am, for on a personal level, I might make it accessible like the manifesting songs playlist, but I am in the process now of making a Patty fucking Diaz playlist. And those songs are going to be the ones that help me step into that. Like, this is who I am. I am a badass. I am fiery. I am feisty. And that is a playlist that I will be able to, to listen to when I'm feeling that doubt, when I'm leaning back into old habits, and when I have reactions to people saying something or commenting or asking me, to not use that language, whatever the case is. So I encourage you to make a playlist of songs that make you feel empowered and name it a title or a phrase or whatever that feels empowering to you. If it's using the word fuck, then do it. If it's not, then don't. Use empowering words for you. And neither one is wrong. And so whether you make it make your own playlist, please, like I mentioned earlier, feel free to get and download my manifesting songs playlist, because maybe some of those songs will help you feel empowered. But I have chosen songs for that playlist that help you feel, that I believe help you feel like anything is possible. You can accomplish absolutely anything, because the truth is you can. So if you start to, or if you create your own playlist, I would love to hear about it. Let me know wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast episode in the comments, or send me an email. The email to reach me or send information is vision, VISION, at bluemoonmanifestations.com. And let me know how you use music, or if this music from my playlist helps and empowers you and helps you feel like everything is possible. So that is the Lunar Lessons episode for this month. The next one will be about the Taurus new moon. And so, or the new moon cycle, the lunar cycle, the Taurus lunar cycle. So many words. But until then, please subscribe to this podcast so that you know when the weekly episode is posted, as well as future lunar lessons episode. And if you are so inspired to, I would appreciate leaving a review or feedback, because that does help spread the word and get this in front of other people who will also enjoy and or benefit from this information. So until next time, keep rocking and stepping into that rock star mindset for you. See you later, guys.